right? So in terms of practice, good scientific practice, okay. Let me go to there. So this is the part we will be talking. So it has a lot of components actually. And let me go to directly slide number, I think 31 or 32, something like that. Yeah, 27 actually. So it's basically redundant publication. This contain many things actually. So for example, according to your syllabus, it contained duplicate and overlapping publications, salami slicing, selective reporting, and misrepresentation of data. Okay. So I'll be covering one by one part. Okay. So first of all, you want to know what is redundant publication. The redundant publication basically means that duplicate. So you know the meaning of the redundant. So it's a duplicate or so anything kind of something called overlapping publications. So it's called the redundant publication. So these kind of things actually belong to part of research publication ethics actually, right? Any journal put they have a research publication ethics, and that contain actually many component. And for example, so these are one of if you look at this simultaneous submission, no informed consent, duplicate submissions, salami slicing, or already something we already talked about plagiarism, data fabrication, data falsification. Okay, there is some more content also belong to part of this publication ethics. And redundant publication is the one of the component of this research and publication ethics. Okay. Now, so this redundant publication basically refers to the practice of submitting the same study into two different journals, or it could be in more journal when you are publishing more or less same work. So you have done some sort of work, research done, and then when try to pursue a different place, little bit changing the content, so that under the consideration of the redundant publication, right? So when it occurs actually, the redundant publication actually occurs, as I said, there's a similar kind of, so if there is a substantial part of work, right, is published more than one without appropriate cross referencing or justification for overlap, right? Sometimes what happened, when you are finding your work and you see there are a lot of scope to explore in different publication. For example, you may write a review, you may write a article, research article, you have a communication. So this communication with the small content should be there. And then if you put up the elaborative way in the article form, and if you're combining in a one particular direction, collecting others findings and what you find out and put it as a review. So when you are doing this practice, communication, article publication and review publication, and even sometime book chapter or book publication, then you need to be a little bit careful what you are putting it up. So for example, I have published one work, there one paper I published, the main work I have published, and then another paper I got as a technical point of view, the techniques I have used. So in details on the technique, like that way, that should be okay. But it's not like that, the similar content should be put up in a different places. So that's not acceptable. So author should be aware about the duplicate publication and which basically reproducing the verbatim content from their other publication. So you should not do this one. So it will be retracted. This should not be done actually, right? And sometimes called self-plagiarism. This also actually comes in the redundant publication part actually, because you are a verbatim content, you are just reproducing from one journal to another places, right? So that's what the self-plagiarism is considered a form of redundant publication as well, right? So it basically concerns recycling or borrowing the content from the previous work without citation. You may take some part and in the logic flow, you just mention that why you have taken that part and what is the intention of doing this kind of putting up in the different places, right? So you should have a logic, you should have a justification on that. So then you are okay, right? So you have to, but in order to practice that kind of things, you need a lot of effort, right? So what should be done if someone want to avoid the redundant publication? Then few things has to be keep it in mind and practice it actually, right? So first one, it's a redundant publication means you're talking about the your journal side as well. Journal, then putting up in the journal or publisher. So then that publisher should put up a notice or they should have a policy and they should make a aware that journals that requires any previous published result. For example, something numerical information may in the form of table or a figure or images are labeled to be make it clear where they were previously reported, right? So you can do that. So journal what requires, journal will guide you. There's the author guides, right? So if you are taking up some part of the work from your previous work, and then you have to mention in so and so tables has been reported, or you can in the table itself, if you are putting up the data in the new table and then for the new journal, then the previous journal you cite on that and put one column the reported data, or you take a copyright permission. For example, if you are publishing a book chapter, that time you take actually many content from the previous published journal actually, and there actually there is a policy to take a copyright permission, then you are okay to put up in the second place or third place. Okay, so this is the common practice, and that makes you to avoid the redundant publication. The papers, particularly those are medical researcher actually. So that presents a new analysis of the result that have already been published should identify the primary source. So if you want to avoid the redundant publication, then find the primary source from where it is taken, and based on that, the new findings is you are putting up. Then you put up the reference of the primary source, and that is also another way to avoid the redundant publication ethics, right? Any previous publication should be disclosed in the paper. That's what the introduction part you have to mention actually before tuning up to your objective of the work, objective of your project, and then you have to state in the introduction part and the topic general things. I'll be talking this actually structurized form in the later on also, but little bit just make it up here. So there are several part introduction, then methodology, then you go for a result and discussion so on. So in the introduction part, you first paragraph you put up as a general interest, and then following part you actually talk about the what are the others you have find out, and then what the research gap is there, and then you based on the research gap, then you put up your things, what you are trying to do, what is the objective of your study, and then you disclose it, right? So that means you are not avoiding anybody's publications related to or some extent has done work on your um, research direction. So you should not omit anybody actually, right? So journal also should remind authors that duplicate publication is not acceptable. So publisher actually sometime in the guide, author's guide actually they put up this kind of policy that so duplicate publication is not acceptable in our journal. So you should not put up it over here. If it is find out, then there will be many consequences of that kind of wrong practice if you do, right? Now, what are the cases is a very important to know actually. So because you are a new researcher maybe, or some of them already started some research in some point, okay? And but if you are a new researcher, then you must keep in mind which are the cases you do not call as a redundant publication. It is not falling in the redundant publication. For example, you initial days when you start acquiring your data, and then you try to, after your title clearance, and then you start working, a little bit work comes out, and then your supervisor always try to tell you that you attend this conference, go there, this seminar, like this, okay? So if you are attending some conference or symposium, and then you need to put up an abstract, and then might be you are selected for a poster presentation or the oral presentation, then in the data little bit you put up in the abstract. What abstract contain actually? Abstract basically summarize what you have done, what you have find out, and conclusion one line like that. What is the importance of the work? So abstract, that is a general pattern I'm talking. It summarize the whole paper. So that means you say one line the importance of the work, where it is goes, and what is the and then you say about the methodology you apply, 2 lines or 1 lines, and the method has been applied, and the result got, and this indicates so and so, and this is our findings. So in that abstract, you put the little bit data. And later on, when you finally you complete your data acquisition and you satisfied with your data, then you write a paper. And while writing paper, and that some data already you put up somewhere in public domain for preparing the abstract or presentation during oral presentation or poster presentation. Then you need to put up the same data over there, but in elaborate way, in the paper format, different way. So in that case, we do not consider that is a redundant publication. So you keep in mind, whenever you publish an article or review or communication, that is more serious as compared to presenting in a conference, or even if you are presenting your initial days of your findings to a supervisor also. Sometimes you discuss among the your group member, right? So that case also, you don't consider the data present in those meetings, and same data you are carry forwarding for the publication context. So that does not define as a redundant publication. So this has to be keep in mind as you are a very new researcher. Okay. Now also results in database and clinical trials. Sometimes what happens? So there is a database, data bank is there, and clinical trials you have given. So there is a repository are there. So now your findings may align with the what repository data is there. Sometimes we take a data from the repository and then do the some kind of simulation work, right? So in that case also, even if you are taking a data from a repository, so that does not consider as a redundant publication, because your the data only data is there, but that is not come up in the paper format. So you are putting in the paper format along with the repository data. You are using your own data, so that should be fine. So if you're using any data, then you just acknowledge that so this data has been taken. So keep it in mind, we have to acknowledge all the time in order to avoid the redundant publication ethics, right? Also, dissertation and theses in university archive. So master students actually sometime, so for example, I actually also train some master students, and I ask them, put them actually in my core project actually. And some of them are very capable to do the work actually, and they even did actually. And then I asked them, you use this data for your thesis complete of the master thesis as well. And later on, if we get more better result and finding meaningful research finding, and then we carry forward for the publication purpose also. Now already the initial days data already put up in the thesis and put it in the university, but still that data can be used for the publication purpose, because you are making up as a, for the more public domain or giving the opportunity to bigger audience to read up your findings, right? So that's absolutely acceptable. That does not consider as a redundant publication, right? Now, in case you find something is redundant, then what actually the higher authorities or the journal where you publish, so what the action they will take. So there is a flow chart, and they will ask a committee, they form a committee, and then on the committee they will ask you follow this flow chart and try to find out the what is going on. Is it considered to be considered as a redundant publication? So the librarian what will do? The librarian will start searching, and screening process will be done, and then he will called up reviewers, three reviewers or more reviewers also, four reviewers also sometime, and reviewers if find there no duplicate content is there, then they discard and declare that it is not a falling in the category of redundant publication. But if they find out there is some sort of substantial amount is repeating, then they will put it as a duplicate publication, and then the pattern determined, and then eventually they declare retract the paper and call that which is a redundant publication. It should not be published, right, in the formal journal. Now, what can happen? So like earlier case also we are talking misconduct. So what can happen if redundant publication are found, right? So like last case we are talking about the if some misconduct done, then the dead end, that the extreme case happen. And also there also I put up one called the paper will be retracted. Similar things will be happen over here as well. If a paper is published and later on it found that it is a falling in the category of redundant, then the editor should refer to COPE. And the full form is a Committee on Publication Ethics flowchart. Just now I put up the flowchart, right? So editor will ask that flowchart to follow by the librarian. There are combined committee that contain librarian as well as the reviewer. Okay, and then the editor will consider working with their publisher to retract the duplicate publication, then put it like this. It is like a retracted. Your paper has been retracted and will be informed, so they will be punishable. So that's a very difficult situation. Your image will go in a scientific community, and then nobody will going to trust you. So eventually nobody will give you like a reviewing paper because you should do the wrong practice. Then how you will find out the some other works to finding that proper way, right? So that's the very difficult situation may happen if there is finding the redundant publication. So you will not get a review like a scientist does review other work, right? As a reviewer. Now in this publication, redundant publication, there is another content called salami slicing. It is something which is very pretty similar kind of the redundant publication. So that's what we say. Redundant publication is also described as a salami publishing, right? It's a slicing something you are doing, right? So for it is a pork, and then you just cutting down from big piece to smaller piece. The similar content over here, you have a one set of work, and you just cutting down to piece of several part, and then publish into different journals. So that means you are not, instead of giving in the story in a one journal, you are putting up with a different journal, right? So sometime you actually that happen. Why? Because sometimes you are in the pressure to publish more, or the student sometimes consider that okay, if you don't have a 2 to 3 publication, you will get the degree, then you are automatically do some kind of wrong practice. So that should not be done. But if you are doing that one, then what has to be done? The finding has previously been published elsewhere without proper cross-referencing and permission or justification. So that means you need to put the proper cross-referencing there and give the permission, and give a justification. In that case, it is may accepted, right? So this will not fall in the category of salami slicing. So this practice might be unintentional, like earlier case also 2FP case, we also talk about the intentional, unintentional and carefulness. So because of that, this may happen. So this salami slicing, generally, I would say it is a intentional, because you are putting up, piecing it, cutting down the work and putting up in the different. So without pre-thought, you are not going to do that. So I won't say this is a unintentional rather than it is an intentional one. Okay, so be careful about that. The transparency by the authors on use of the previously published work usually provides the necessary information to make a assessment on whether it is a deliberate or unintentional, right? So the previously published works should be provides, and we provide the full information so that it is a deliberate one or it is unintentional. So the final judgment comes from there, right? So last component of this redundant publication is misrepresentation on data. Now here I'll spend like 3 slides. So misrepresentation on data, right? So in that case, what basically misrepresentation indicates that, right? So it is unlike a fabrication and falsification. Fabrication means you just making up the data, or falsification. So falsification means you are just that internet exists, you are putting it up. Is neither clear nor uncontroversial, right? So for example, let's say you're taking a statistics, and you're setting up the things called drinks. The student generally usually drinks. There are different kind of drinks. The soft drinks are drinks, and that including water, milk, or juice, or soda, or tea. So different type of drinks, and you are trying to find out the number of students drinks. So usually the common sense in daily life, we use water as the amount. So even though that student also should use the water as a common drink, and then the secondary drinks like a milk, juice, soda, tea. So depending on the person who is having. Now in this statistic, what we find out, so somebody reported like a soda is the more student use the soda. So that is absolutely wrong representation. It's a misrepresentation. It's not absolutely correct, right? So this kind of statistics will be called as a misrepresentation of that, right? So most scientists will agree that fabrication is making up the data, and falsification is changing the data. So you change the data in order to make up the story, right? Now, so in that sense, what actually in the bigger sense, what actually does it mean to misrepresent the data? So it's as a minimal answer to this question, one can define misrepresentation of data. Basically, one can define the misrepresentation of data as honestly communicating to report the data in a deceptive manner, right? So you are again, what is deceptive manner? So honestly communicating, right? But that is a deceptive manner. So what deceptive manner again meaning is basically means that the use of scientists to present a research with numerous opportunity to misrepresent the data, right? So in order to use in a different places, so you get a more and more publication or any other things. So what you do, you will misrepresent the data, right? So you in order to publish, or in order to get in the more publication or something like that. So that should not be actually the common practice. Now here I took a few examples. For example, all of you know the regression formula. Y is equal to mx plus c. Here it is actually b. So that is the regression formula. What is multiple regression? If you increase the order, Let's say this is the first order, second component, third component, and so on. So moment you do a multiple regression actually, so whenever you put fitting the main data, this is the main data. And this is out of actually maybe the peaks contain 2 peaks. Those are actually do, I think everybody understand this kind of figure, right? All of you. So in order to fit that, then you need to apply the multiple regression. So that gives more better result, right? So when you're doing the variance analysis, then the fitting, how the better fitting will come is something like a multiple regression when there is a non-linear fitting you want to do, right? Instead of straight line, y is equal to mx plus c, that gives you a straight line. But if your data is not at a straight line, then little bit deviate, then you to put the multiple regression formula. Similarly, when the analysis of variance you do, you just like a total is divided into 2 parts and then finding the variance and between the 2 groups of 2 peaks, right? So here within the group of variation. So when you do this kind of things, you need to be very careful. You know exactly this does work. This interpretation is necessary for your overall the peaks you are coming. So if you don't have that much knowledge, then you don't do that. Or might be eliminate outer layer of the cleaning of the raw data. So sometimes because of instrument noise, electronic noise put up in your signal and you cut down the noise. But that it might be the real one actually. So you are cutting down that one to make it up the smooth or good presentation. So that's another kind of misrepresentation. I'm a chemist and then I always try to tell the student, you should not take the average of the burette reading, right? The burette reading, if you take this here, the figure I have 10.1, 11, then 11.8. So if there is a changes between these two data by 0.1, then I accept only. And most of the time I tell them you should get a concurrent data. That means similar data 10.1 should be repeated another time. Then only I accept your data. Otherwise, if somebody putting like this kind of figure, then I will not have a chance to judge the student how good hand he has or she has, right? So that's the called precision level. So this is also if you somebody taking the average on this kind of bigger variation data, then also you talk about as a misrepresentation of the data. Okay. Now other way of representation, misrepresentation of the here also there's a few examples I gave. So for example, here I took from this source. If somebody put like this graph, this is absolutely misleading because you started from 900 to your scale started from 900. Now where is the 0? Is this 900 is the minimum point? What is the base point? So adding 0 with break, suppose if you have a 0 to, if you put the graph will be looks very lengthy, and that's what you cut down like from starting from here. But instead of doing that, there is a way to cut down this and put it at 0. So that means your data point actually start from 0, and that's the more appropriate representation rather than doing this kind of presentation. So this is a misleading graph, and this is the proper graph you are writing. Okay. So what are the cases you called as a misrepresentation of the data? So there are few cases may arise because of cases arise because there are several reasons. Might be, for example, it may dishonest. You are doing intentionally to make up your data properly. It could be accidental. It is a partition, right? Or it could be for political pressure or ignorance, biasness, careless, or so there are many way. So this can happen. This misrepresentation of data, but this should be avoided. Okay, this does not fall in the publication ethics. Okay, so with this, from this part, actually, I have a lot of questions to be. Please take a screenshot or note it down because this session will be soon completing because I have just 4 minutes. So please note it down and